This video is going to help you to answer those types of questions which ask you to design a suitable question for a survey. They normally ask you to include a response section as well. So we're going to have a look at two different questions here, very similar ones, just so we can cover all of the main points that you need to know. The first one says, James wants to find out how much exercise people do, design a suitable question that he could use, include a response section. So when you design a question, it's really important, especially one like this, how much exercise people do, that you ask yourself over what period of time. So your question has to say something like, how many hours of exercise do you do per week on average? Okay, that would be a good question to start things off, because it's got a time frame, how many hours you do per week, and it's also asking people to sort of give a rough idea. They're saying on average, you know, you're not expecting people to go away and work it out on a calculator what's their average number, but you're asking them on average what sort of ballpark are we in. So that would be an absolutely fine question. How many hours of exercise do you do per week on average? I'm going to leave that just open for a second, because I'm going to want to add to it in a minute, but that would be an absolutely perfect question to start off with. Now, what lots of people would be tempted to do would be to come along and put their tick boxes. Remember, a response section means tick boxes. So you probably want 4 or 5 of those. Okay? Lots of people are tempted to come along and do something like this. 0 to 1 hours, 1 to 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours, 4 or more hours. Okay? That's not going to get you your mark. At the moment we're going to get a mark for our question. We're not going to get a mark for our answers, because there's an overlap. If you did exactly 1 hour of exercise per week, okay, and you timed yourself every week and you did it as exactly 1 hour, you wouldn't know which of these boxes to tick. Is it this one or is it this one? So a slightly better way of saying the same thing would be to use inequalities, like this, okay? 0 to 1, with 0 included in the first box. 1 to 2. 2 to 3. 3 to 4. And more than 4. Okay, so if we were to do that, I'll just scrub those out. If we were to do the inequalities, then that would be getting a mark. Okay, that would get us our second mark. The trouble is that people really seem to find the inequalities quite tricky to remember how to do. They're not quite sure how they work. They're not quite sure which way around to do them. So I'm just going to show you a quick way that you can actually modify your question to make this a lot easier to do. If you go back to your question, how many hours of exercise do you do per week on average? If you then tell the person to round to the nearest hour, okay, then what you've got is you've given the responsibility for the rounding, and all that decision making has now gone to the person who's answering the question. So I'm going to scrub out all of those inequalities, and I'm just going to put in here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 or more, like that. Okay, now because I've asked the person in the question to round to the nearest hour, everyone will be able to answer. They'll go, okay, well, if I did exactly half an hour, I'll round it up. If I did exactly 1.5 hours, I'll round it up. If I did 20 minutes, I'll round it down and I'll put 0. Okay, giving them that responsibility and saying round your number means that you can get your answer boxes nice and simple and get that second mark. So my advice is, when you're designing a question, get people to round their answers so that you can put nice, simple answer boxes. Let's have another go with this question. This question says, Melinda works for an IT company. She wants to find out how long her colleagues spend looking at computer screens. Design a suitable question she could ask and include a response section. So Melinda, I think, should ask a question like this. On average, how long would you say you spend looking at a computer screen per day. So my question is saying on average, so not asking them to look at last week or having made a note, but they're asking them to make an estimate. How long are you spending looking at the computer screen? Per day is important because they need to know, is it 4 hours per day or is it 4 hours per week? You need to have that specified. So the person answering the question is going to be really clear about how long they're looking at, and probably going to think about yesterday and the day before. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say round to the nearest half hour. Okay, and I'm giving the instruction there. I'm passing the responsibility on to the person who's going to answer this survey question. So my question is now great. Okay, it says a time period, and it's asking them to round to the nearest half hour. And suddenly my answer boxes become really easy. I don't have to include any inequalities, any groups or anything. I just have to say 0, half an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and then I probably want, because it's an IT company, I'd probably go up to something like 6 hours, but maybe I'd have structured the question a little bit better, but there's no problem with just putting 3 hours or more here. Okay, and suddenly you've got a question which is really clear, and an answer section which is really easy to write out, and you're going to get both marks there. You're going to get the first mark for writing a decent question, you're going to get the second mark for making sure that there are no gaps or overlapping answer boxes, because you've eliminated the need for them by rounding to the nearest half hour. Okay, I hope you're going to use that, because that is a really easy way to make sure you get both marks.